Wemby week is upon us, and as you heard, expectations, well, they don't get a whole lot higher. Taking a look at some of the top draft prospects since King James. Quite the group of individuals, but let's take a look at number one. We will in depth. Let's take a look at number two, the one they call street clothes. How about three, injury issues, others as well. Four, a bust. Five, knees. Six, who knows. Seven, Achilles. I'm just saying, maybe we chill. I promise not to rain on the parade of Kyle Boone, but I do have some questions. Kyle, it's always good to see you. We are past top overall pick conversations, obviously, and we've jumped right to mentioning this young man's name alongside Mount Rushmore types. Fact or fiction, this is the best prospect we have seen since King James.
Yeah, Moose, that's a fact. That's a fact. And it doesn't mean necessarily that he's going to be the best player since LeBron James. It doesn't mean he's going to be one of the all-time greats, but when you combine his size, his skill, his fluidity, his projection to the NBA, it's hard not to think that he is clearly, I think, the best prospect we've seen in 2 decades. I mean, you can make a case for Anthony Davis, who you mentioned, street clothes, Zion Williamson. There's been some really good prospects over the years, but someone who is 7'5", who has an 8-foot wingspan, who's leading the Pro A, which is the best professional league in France in shots, blocked, in rebounds, in scoring. He just took Mets 92, a team that was pretty understaffed for the most part, to the Pro A finals. So he is the best prospect we've seen in several decades. We'll see if it translates to the NBA. There's a lot of excitement, obviously, around Victor Wembanyama.
I want to go there next, but a tip of the cap towards you and your analysis there, because you also factor in where he's going to develop that talent. And I'm not sure there's a better tutelage to learn under. Can we at least maybe caution the dangers of unicorn hunting? I present the feet of Chet Holmgren, the ankles and knees of Kristaps Porzingis, and the general anatomy, as we mentioned, of Anthony Davis. I'd like to establish this as a safe space to say the quiet thing out loud. What is your biggest worry when it comes to Wemby?
Yeah, I think I should maybe whisper this here. I think the real concerns with Victor Wembanyama is what is obvious, right? He's 7'5", but he's very skinny. There's questions about whether his body will hold up over an 82-game NBA season. Can he sustain, I think longevity throughout his career? I think that is a big question for him. He spent last season with Mets 92 playing in Pro A, and Moose, this guy played essentially once a week in the professional rank. So I think playing an 82-game schedule in the NBA is going to be a different grind for him. I think the Spurs will have a really good plan to kind of ingratiate himself and get him acclimated from Pro A to the NBA. But I think it's absolutely a question. I think it's a fair question. We've seen really talented big men over the years just not be able to hold up over the NBA stretch. So it's a huge question mark for Wemby. If he's able to stay healthy, obviously, the sky's the limit for his potential.
Yeah, the skill is undeniable. What lays out in front of him is formidable as well. It's going to be a blast to watch. It is the draft, however, and there are other millionaires to be minted this coming week. What are the Hornets best suited doing there at number 2?
Yeah, I think, Moose, there's 2 real viable options, and I think most likely options for the Hornets at number 2. I think most likely right now, Brandon Miller at number 2. He's from Alabama. He's 6'9", shoots 39% from 3. I think he can play multiple positions in kind of your backcourt. Fits, I think, pretty well next to LaMelo Ball. For my money, I think the best prospect is Scoot Henderson. He's more of an on-ball guard. I think he can play next to LaMelo Ball and be, kind of a secondary creator, someone who can take kind of the playmaking burden off of LaMelo Ball. To me, I think there's more upside, more star potential with Scoot Henderson, and the fit may be a little bit better for Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. So, it comes down to, I think, probably philosophy. If you're picking at number 2, you're picking at number 2 for a reason, which was your team's not very good and you need to get as much talent as possible. For my money, I think I would take the upside swing with Scoot Henderson, but I think there's a real case that Brandon Miller could be the safe option here for the Hornets at number 2.
Yeah, the drama likely to unfold there at number 2 and the dominoes that follow. So let's say Scoot at 2 means, by all assumptions, as you outlined, Brandon Miller to Portland there at number 3. I'm sure it's been a welcome few months out of the headlines for Miller, but I'm also sure that those conversations will all resurface in the week to come. How do you evaluate all that comes with this top-tier talent?
Yeah, Brandon Miller, I think, is a prospect who I think is really exciting, because this isn't a guy who really kind of came out of nowhere. He was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. He led all freshmen last season at Alabama in points per game last season. He was an All-American. He was very, very productive. There's some questions about his athleticism. He did not have particularly good numbers when you kind of dive deep into his profile in terms of how he finished at the rim. I think there's some questions about how he can separate at the next level, but look, like 6'9" combo forwards who can score at will, that can be kind of playmakers and really play multiple positions on defense, are so valuable right now. Maybe he doesn't have superstar potential, but he's someone who I think is going to average 20 points per game in the NBA, and wings who can do multiple things on the court, I think is so valuable right now. So it's why we have as a top 3 prospect on the CBS big board. I think he comes with a lot of really exciting promise for the NBA level.
Maybe ironic to say, or maybe not accurate, but perhaps the most risk-averse decision here when we talk about on-court of those top 3 names in the draft. Let's talk about beyond those 3 names, because this is, again, the draft. And as we saw at the outset, so much can be done beyond round 1, even, as we've seen with our most recent champion. Under the radar, talk to me about a guy we're not talking about right now that we should be.
Yeah, the NBA draft, Moose, is a young man's game. It really is. The NBA teams really like to take gambles on young prospects. Someone who's being, I think, undervalued is Jaime Jaquez. He's 22 years old. He comes from UCLA. He spent 4 years at UCLA. Is a crafty scorer, really good creator, a good defender. He played through injuries throughout a majority of his career at UCLA, and he was still an All-American level of productivity. So he's a guy who I think has really impressed NBA teams during the pre-draft process. He doesn't have athleticism that I think is going to jump off the highlight page necessarily, but feels a little bit Dylan Brooksy, right? Where he's a little bit overlooked because he's older. He was very productive at the college level. To me, he screams a winner, and someone who I think is going to be picking in the 20s is going to be very happy that he slips that far.
It is an undergrad degree and a doctorate in high-stakes hoops. We'll see if that translates to the next level, despite that advanced age that we don't see early on in this draft too much anymore. As we move past under the radar, help us turn the storylines into money lines, let's say. What should a bet what bet should we be making ahead of this Thursday's draft, somewhere where we can turn their money into ours?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I think so. Clearly, we know, or we can pretty much assume, that Victor Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, in some order, are going to go number 1, number 2, number 3. I think there's some value here to be had if you're betting on some props for the number 5 pick. Now, number 4, I think, is going to be interesting. The Houston Rockets, I think they have some good options. They could take Amen Thompson. They could take Oscar Thompson, his twin. Jarris Walker, I think, should be in the mix here. Cam Whitmore should be in the mix. But for the 5th pick, you could get some pretty good odds on plus money. Cam Whitmore at plus 105 right now at Caesars, I think it's pretty good value. I think if Cam Whitmore does not go number 4, I would consider him to be the favorite to go number 5. You can get him at plus 105. Jarris Walker is really good value here too, plus 325. The Pistons already have kind of their backcourt established. Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham. Adding a reinforcer like Jarris Walker would make a lot of sense. He can play multiple positions. I think he would give them kind of a small ball 5 type of dynamic. And Detroit, I think that would be one of the more exciting, fun teams to watch. It would make a lot of sense. There's some value, I think, for the pick odds there at plus 105 for Cam Whitmore, plus 325 for Jarris Walker.
Definitely some nice plus money there at number 5. To Wemby and beyond, KB, we appreciate you. Talk to you soon. And there's only one place to be when that clock starts ticking. That's with us on CBS Sports HQ. On the clock, draft coverage coming your way here beginning at 8 Eastern. All the biggest names of ours, talking about all the biggest names of tomorrow. Join us.